Shall we begin? Let's begin now.
All right, everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Frankly Francisco podcast. Today, I have a guest who is a well-established author. He has published 22 books. 22, that's right. Two, which is amazing because that tells me he has a lot of time on his hand, or he has so much information that he had in his head that he wants to get out, you know, that he's been writing every which way he can. I'd like to introduce everybody to Branch Isole. How are we doing today, Branch?
Francisco, how are you today, my brother? Good to be here.
I'm good. Listen, so I was very intrigued. One of the subjects that I wanted to talk to you about and we'll get there is the Bible prophecies, because I've always wanted to learn about this stuff. I love history. I love anything to do with history. I'm very open-minded to interpretations of what people perceive when it comes to that, because people have different views on the prophecies that are in the Bible. So but tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me how you got into this role of wanting to help people heal, mentally, spiritually. Like, where did this come about for you?
Well, I grew up in the 50s and 60s. And after college, I went into the corporate world for about 15 years. I was in sales and marketing. And it wasn't a good fit. I was very successful, but it wasn't fulfilling. So I left that and got into small business entrepreneurship. And over the next 2 decades, I was involved with about 5 different startup companies. And at that point, I decided I wanted to go back to school. And so I was doing some studying, some Bible studying, and I thought, I've got to know more. So I re-enrolled in college, Bible college, and went back to school. And over the next 6 years in my studies, it sort of put me on that spiritual path, both from an academic standpoint, but it allowed me to, dig deeper and how did it apply to me in my life. And so that's how it came about. And so I started writing, my first book was about a spiritual walk, and it's primarily for fallen away Christians or seekers and searchers who are looking for truth in their life. So that was the premise. And the books just kept coming after that. So for the last 25 years, I've been, dedicated all of my time to writing and sharing and teaching and mentoring.
So you have a degree from seminary school then, right?
I do, yes.
And how long did that take you to achieve? Is it 4 years?
6 years.
Oh, 6?
Yeah, I have a 6 years. Yeah. Well, I wasn't, because I wasn't on campus and I wasn't in, a degree program where I had to get done in time. I was doing it as well as working and, juggling life's activities. So, but I was in no hurry. It was only a degree for me. Actually, I went with the intention of not getting a degree. I just wanted to do some studying, but that wasn't a choice. If you were going to be in the program, you had to be in a degree program. So I got the degree, but that wasn't, my original focus. I have a bachelor's of science in education. I was a public school teacher and then a public school administrator. I was a middle school assistant principal, and that was my first job out of college before I went into sales and marketing. So I've got a postgraduate degree in educational administration, and then I've got a master's in theology.
So with the theology, how did that shape? Like, it's crazy to me a little bit, because you go from corporate America to seminary school, you get your degree in theology. How did you you had to combine the two, didn't you? Because you had to be able to sell your books that you were making. I know you were sending a message, trying to give a message, but you had to eat as well. So how did you balance that?
Well, I had a job. My wife and I actually, we lived in Hawaii, and we were caretakers on the estate of a celebrity. And so that was our job. We were all day long taking care of this property, 500-acre ranch. And so that was our job. but because we lived on property and the owner was not there all the time, she lived in California, so she only came, to Maui occasionally. So, I had time. I mean, I had my work a day, but it wasn't like I was clocking in. I could mow the grass, for 2 hours and get that done. And in that time, I could be thinking about my studies or, going over my studies. I controlled my time, and that's what made it possible. I didn't have a regular 9 to 5 kind of job where I had to be certain place doing something, at that time. So my day was my own. That gave me flexibility, in my work schedule to do the things that I wanted to do for myself.
So typically, 22 books is an amazing accomplishment. How long does it typically take you to actually write a book out from start to your first draft, second draft, you editing, flesh it all out, and then publish?
Well, there's 3 steps. One is the writing. That takes about 6 months, 6 to 8 months. I can write a book. Then the editing process starts, and that takes anywhere from 12 to 18 months. So whenever I come out with a book, the plan is a 2-year cycle. And then when it comes out, then you've got all of the business end and the marketing end after that. So, but it's about a 2-year process for each of the books.
So your target audience with your books is people of faith, correct?
Well, not necessarily. Some are for people of faith. Some are for people who have fallen away from their faith. Some are for people who are seeking and searching, a fulfillment in their life that their life is not giving them at this point. I write for adults, and I write about contemporary situations that explain, expose, and express an underlying lesson or theme that the reader gets from reading the story. These are all pretty short stories for today's reader, so they can get through them pretty quickly. But when they finish the story, the goal is for them to have realized or seen something that they identify with in their own life, but from an angle that they might not have thought about. A lot of it deals with emotions, and how emotionally invested we are in our choices. And with every choice, we have to face a consequence. So that's the process. And it's to take the reader, give them something that they can identify with, that then takes them out of their own situation so that they can see there's an answer here that perhaps I hadn't looked at or thought about. Maybe that gives me a new avenue to pursue to reduce some of the stress, the struggle, the conflict, in my life.
So essentially, you're inspiring people, but you're doing it in such a way where they figure out themselves, what they're missing in their life with your works. I mean, I think that's a beautiful thing. I think you're giving people an opportunity to find themselves without ramming it down their throat. They have to figure it out on their own, and they have to see how they can relate to the story that they're reading, which is fantastic. It's a great way to go about it. And especially with today's, and the fact that you say these are short stories is even better. Because, we talked about it earlier, people's attention spans, it's hard to hold some of these people's attention spans. And shorter stories, but poignant shorter stories, can help a lot of people because they can focus on, hey, I can relate to this. This is something that I can, might help me. We're locked in. And I think it's a good thing.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly the process, and that's exactly the intent. Give the reader something they can identify with, get through quickly, and then spend as much time as they desire or they need to really process what they've read, what it meant, how it applies to them.
So I know you got your theology. I'm sorry, theology, correct?
Correct.
So
Yep.
You never thought about being a preacher? You never thought about, having your own congregation? Because there's a lot of people who go into getting their theology, going to seminary school to become a preacher, have their own flock and, start their own church. But you went the opposite way with that.
yeah, that wasn't my calling. And I knew early on that that was not for me. You know, I grew up Christian. We weren't churchgoers. We went Christmas and Easter. We were sort of C&E Christians. You know, I was exposed, but it wasn't part of our life. And as an adult, I was asked to leave a couple of churches because I questioned a lot of things. And so I knew early on that, you know, being in the pulpit was not my calling. My Christian walk is a spiritual walk. It's not an ecclesiastic walk. So I'm talking with people and sharing about what's missing in your life, and if that's spiritual grounding, then how do you get that spiritual grounding? And then once you've got it, what do you do with it, right? It's got to be part of your life, and it's got to be something that helps you through life, helps you grow, helps you see the truth in your life and in your world. And once that you see that and you understand it because of your spiritual grounding, that balance that's missing for a lot of people is established. And once that balance is there, you start to see your purpose in the world and in your family and in your community and in your neighborhood. And once we know what our purpose is, then the path is self-evident, and you automatically become a better person, a better husband, a better father, a better, you know, individual at work. You become a better person all around because you have something greater than yourself living within yourself. You know, your spirit becomes alive, it becomes activated, and that gives you a whole new lease on life. You see things very differently, and you recognize both the truth and the fallacy of the world. And once you recognize it, it's easy for you to, you know, shun the negative or let the old baggage go. You can become a new person because you've got this new balance. You've balanced out your human part with your spiritual part.
One of the best lines I heard from someone, they told me, was, it's not about the ritual, it's about the message. And I think a lot of people get it mixed up. It's not about the ritual, it's about the message that's trying to be spoken across. And a lot of people think, you know, you have to go and wear a 3-piece suit, and, you know, it's not about that. Yeah, I tell people all the time, you know, faith is something that you have to carry yourself. Nobody can carry it for you. You know what I mean? If it makes your life better and it makes you a better person, it doesn't, to me, I'm just, the way I feel is, doesn't matter what faith you have. I don't care if you're a Buddhist. I don't care if you're Catholic. I don't care if you're Muslim. If that faith is helping you stay grounded and making you a better person and you're better for it, carry on. You know what I mean? And I think that's the best way to think about it.
Amen. I couldn't agree more. It's, you know, that relationship is not about a building or catechism or some ritual or pomp and circumstance. It's about how you connect with something greater than yourself, outside of yourself, that helps you grow and be a better person in this time and place.
So let me ask you a question. Are you still teaching people? Do you read? Do you have, do you go to like bookstores? Do you have signings? Or do you have, do you have like a website that you go on? So what is it that you do with the books that you have, and how do you spread your message?
Sure, I have a website. All of my books are available, you know, on all the usual outlets: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, iTunes, Apple Store. They're all readily available just wherever you would buy books or ebooks. So that part of the marketing, you know, is just part of the business end of it. Yeah, I go to book fairs. I don't do a lot of signing. Most of my books are signed because people order them, you know, from the website. Then they get a signed copy. I go to high schools and colleges. I'll go anywhere and talk for anybody who wants to have me. You know, that's the goal. That's the job, is to share with people how to overcome the conflict and the stress that you're experiencing in life, by looking at another avenue that you have available to you. You know, we get buried under the layers of living our lives in the world. And yet there's this tiny piece that's missing, that when we understand it and make it part of our lives, it allows us to see a much broader picture of the life that we're living.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, people tend to have something missing in their life. You know, let's say it was a job they always wanted, they finally get it and they still feel empty inside, or a relationship that they wanted and it's still not fulfilling. A lot of people have holes that they can't fill. And sometimes I think that leads to them doing things that put them down the wrong path, because they don't feel satisfied in what they're doing. So they have to find something that makes them feel good or thrilling, or something that, you know, that's taboo, that's going to make them say, "Ooh, I'm not supposed to do this. This is what makes it fun." But at the end, they'll regret it. And 9 out of 10 times they normally do. I think a lot of people don't have that balance. I think a lot of people burn out. You know what I mean? They burn out too quickly, or because they can't fulfill a need that they don't know what the need is. They don't take the time to sit down and figure it out, because we're a microwave generation now. This is not back, you know, we're not, this is not 30, 40 years ago. We're in a generation now where if I want something, I'm just going to get it, whether it makes me happy or not. If it doesn't, it'll make me happy for 5 minutes, and I'll go get the next thing. I think you're correct. It's that balance that we have a hard time as people finding.
Well, life is about relationships and it's about choices. And what a lot of people forget is that for every choice, there's a consequence. And the consequence may be good, it may be bad, it may be downright ugly. The point is to learn from the bad and the ugly and only make good choices that are in your best interest. And the way you do that is by having that balance where you can see the reality of your reality, and you're honest with yourself, and you say, you know, I really want to do this, but it's not a real good idea. I've done this. Say I go to a party and I get, you know, inebriated, or I overdose, not to a point of death, but I've taken too much substance into my body. And I've got 3 choices of getting home. I can drive home, I can get someone else to help me to drive home. And out of those choices, I can get home safely, or I can be stopped by the police and all the ramifications that brings, or I can get into an accident and all the ramifications that brings. Now, having done this before and gotten home safely, I think, okay, well, I've done it before and I can do it again. But it only takes that one negative aspect, that one DUI, or that one, you know, accident that it injures or maims or kills you or someone else, that can change your entire life. And yet a lot of people, you know, make choices based on experiences that they've already had. And even if those are negative experiences, they tend to make that choice again. And they keep doing this until that tragedy happens and changes their entire life. So it's about a choice and it's about a consequence. And if I know that going in, and I understand that, you know, 2 of those 3 choices are not going to be in my best interest, then I get somebody to drive me home, or I get a ride home. You know, and people continue to make choices that bring them negative responses or negative consequences. And you wonder why they keep living that way. You know, I believe there's that something missing. There's that connection that allows them to rationally say, what's in my best interest in this choice that I've got? And when you have the Spirit of God living within you, He shows you the negative. He doesn't give you the positive, but He automatically, when you say, gee, what should I do in this situation? And you've connected with God and His Spirit lives within you, that's the power of His Spirit. It allows you to see the negative. Now you can still make that choice, and you're throwing the dice to what happens. But if you know that He has your best interest at heart and you make that good choice, then you avoid all of the negative manifestations that can come to harm your life. It's just simple choice and consequence. And the idea is to continue to make better choices so the results are better.
So for you, what has been the biggest pain point for you spreading your message? Because there's always stumbling blocks. So for you, what has been that biggest pain point?
It's not a pain point, it's a disappointment point. When I speak with people about spiritual grounding and using that spiritual strength, the difficult part is for people, they don't understand that it's not an instantaneous reception, right? If God is the creator of the universe, then he has created us as part of that creation. And because he is spirit, then we are also spirit. And so we have an innate connection with God already. When we're born, we're a combination of mind, body, soul, and spirit. And that spirit is from him, right? But we live in a world that wants us to believe that he's here and we're here. And those two can't mix. They can't make that connection. And even though we already have the connection, the ways of the world try to convince us that we're in control and we know all that we need to know about being in this world. So the disappointment comes when people receive the spirit and get spiritually grounded. They expect immediate change in their life, and that's not how the Lord works. When we get on that spiritual path, he wants to know if we're going to stay on that path, or are we going to be get me out of this situation, Lord, and I'll go to church every Sunday, or whatever the deal may be. And that's not how it works. What you're using is that spiritual grounding. You're using that spiritual strength of the Lord to help you move down that path, to grow. And that takes time. We all grow within the chronological time that we have on earth. We're supposed to grow also beyond our physical growth. We grow mentally and psychologically and emotionally and spiritually. So that takes time. And that's sort of the biggest disappointment is people go, okay, I got it. I'm with you. Now my life is going to change starting tomorrow. Well, it may change starting tomorrow, but that's just the first step. And the idea is for you to embrace, that new spiritual understanding and spiritual strength, so it fills those holes in your heart that you were alluding to a few minutes ago. That way you can enjoy your life. It's not a race to get to the end. It's a journey to enjoy and enjoy becoming the best person that you can be. Becoming a loving and a truthful and an honest person. And when you do that, when you're on that path, then the blessings come and you recognize those blessings for what they are. It's not an instant gratification. It takes time. God's time is not like our time. Our time is different. Once we come to the Lord, we go, man, I want it now, and I want it to be all what it wasn't before, and it will be, but it's a journey.
I think some people mistake too, like when they think somebody's good at something, like, oh, he's a great actor, or he's a great musician, or he's a great ball player. Just because they're great at something doesn't make them a good person. And this is what people don't understand. People think because they're good at something that makes them good as a person, and that doesn't work. Some of the most miserable people in the world are some of the most talented. You know what I mean? Some of the most people who have so much self-hate for themselves are some of the richest people in the world as well. Money doesn't equate happiness. You need it while you're here, you do, but it doesn't equate happiness. Talent doesn't equate happiness. You can be the most talented person in the world, and you got people that unalive themselves all the time because they can't deal with life. They'll put on a fake front for everyone around them. You know what I mean? It's all happy-go-lucky, but in their own world, like you said, something is missing and they can't fill. Look at Anthony Bourdain for one. You know what I mean? The guy he was great at what he did, but he had inner demons that he couldn't handle, and he unalived himself. So I think you're right. I think people don't know how to deal with certain things, and they manifest all the negative in their life. And then once that manifests, it's hard to put it back put it back in the box and, you know, not deal with it. And a lot of these guys can't deal with it once it comes up.
Well, we all have struggles. That's part of life. You don't get away from that. It's how you handle the struggles. You know, to get to the very top of your industry or your endeavor, whatever that might be, sports, business, entertainment, when you get to the top, it's very time consuming, it's very demanding, and you have to carry a lot of people on your payroll. And for every one of those actions and those people and those events and all of the things that you're involved with in trying to keep that momentum and that being on top, to keep that going, you know, it is difficult. It's a difficult lifestyle, and we can't escape, you know, we can't escape our demons if we allow them to be with us. And so those, you know, you read and see a lot of stories of people who are very successful and end up having a good fall or big fall, and how they recover is the key. You know, can they get through it, reinvent themselves, and keep going? And the fact is, most of them can't. You know, you can pick any celebrity or any well-known person, especially in the arts and entertainment, and eventually that lifestyle, you either burn out or you blow up. You can't stay on top indefinitely. And the struggle to stay on top indefinitely, you know, takes a lot of mental energy. And it's just very difficult. You know, you see the ones who make it are the ones who are balanced. Again, you know, yes, they've got an endeavor, they've got an industry, they've got a skill that brings them a living, but they also have a family. They also contribute, you know, to something in their life. They are outside of themselves. And so that balance gives them what they need to continue to go. You know, look at the Rolling Stones. Those guys have been doing it for 50 years and they're still going. But, you know, if you knew the backstory, it hasn't all been lots of money and lots of celebrity. You know, they have issues that they have to deal with in their lives too. We see the facade, we see, you know, what the media wants to present. It's only when we see the backstory that we see how much struggle, you know, their life has been and what it's cost them on that journey. You know, you can't buy happiness. You said it. Money won't get you happiness. There's nothing that will fulfill your heart like a spiritual relationship. The problem is you won't know that until you're on that path. And that's the obstacle. You know, everybody wants to be on the path, but they want it to work for them. They don't want to do the work. And when you're on the path and you see, this is the whole point, you see truth. When you recognize truth, then you recognize the fabrications and the lies. And when you have that recognition, you have the power to keep the lies and the fabrications out of your life. And that's what that balance gives you. It gives you the opportunity to see life's joys and life's enjoyments along with life's tasks. You don't become overwhelmed with the world's ways. They have their part and their partition and their purpose, but you're no longer under their control. You've got the balance you need to see the reality of your reality.
So for me, like everybody, like I said, everybody carries their own dark side. Like it's dark and light, and I have to find that balance, because there's a lot of darkness in my family and a lot of things that I grew up with that, you know, that'll never go away. You just have to learn how to balance it. And my family balanced it out. My wife, my kids, you know, wanting a bright future for them is what helps me balance myself. Sometimes the dark creeps in a little bit more than the light, but then I have to, you know, bring myself back, because I can get lost in it, just like a lot of people can. But I know that I have to stay in the middle, because my family needs me, my wife needs me, my kids need me, I need them. So to me, I get it. I get it. It can be hard sometimes, but if you have something worth fighting for, if you have something that you know is there and is present for you, you have a purpose. And my family's my purpose.
Well, that's it. You said it. You have a purpose. When you have a purpose, then you have a goal. And when you have a goal, and you can visualize that goal, then you can find out, what do I need to do to make that happen? This is the whole point of, self-help, is I want to be in a different place, and I want to enjoy and reap the blessings and rewards of that place. Until I can see that place, there's no way I can get there. Once I can see that place and visualize it and know what it looks like, then I can identify each of the steps that brings me closer to that place of being. That balance allows us to, rein in our passion so that we don't go full throttle and miss some of the important signs and signals along the way that keep us in the guardrails. And that's what family does. That's what children do. That's what serving others does. That's what being on committees in your neighborhood and groups at work. It gives us a purpose that then makes us a better person. And in becoming a better person, we're able to reach our personal goal, but we're able to, have that balance that allows us to serve and enjoy along the journey to that personal goal. We don't want to get to the goal and then destroy ourselves. And a lot of times, that's what happens with somebody who's, I'll do whatever I have to, whatever I can to attain that thing or that position. And when you're in that mindset, we can do a lot of harm along the way. And that's not fulfilling. Every time we harm somebody or we've created danger or untrust in our lives, that's eventually going to come back and haunt us. The truth will always come out. You can look at politics today. You can look at business today. The truth always comes out. It may take a lifetime, but the truth will be revealed. And when you see the truth, then you realize how much that person struggled to strive to get where they're at. And what did it, amount to in the end? They've ruined their reputation. They've ruined their family. They've ruined their business. There's just too much at stake. And yet, that's the path that a lot of people are on. Without that balance, they've got no red flags that say, wait a minute, let's take a look at that before we make that leap.
So listen, I think what you're doing is great. I think you are giving people the options and the tools themselves to figure out what they need in their life and in a way for them to get it without making it feel like you're forcing things on them. And I think that's the best part about what you do, is you have a message without a message. Essentially, is you're giving them the tools to figure out what their own message is. Now, we got a couple minutes before we jump off here. I want to talk to you and shift gears a little bit about the prophecies in the Bible. You went to seminary school, and I've always been curious about some of these prophecies that they have. One in particular has always been for me the mark of the beast, the 666, because from what everybody talk about, from what I've seen shows, they always say that some people think they were talking about Nero, the Roman emperor, because of the way he treated everybody. So in your opinion, what is your thought on this, on what that mark actually really means?
Okay, well, let's back up for just a second. When they mention Nero, the Antichrist is going to be a real person, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the spirit of the Antichrist has been with man since Adam. I mean, that spiritual Antichrist has shown itself throughout history in a variety of different people who have been destructive and heinous, and destroyed a lot of people along the way. So the spirit of Antichrist was with Nero, was with Hitler, was with Idi Amin, was with a lot of these people in history. who caused a lot of death and destruction. But the Antichrist that is going to be coming in the end times, in the last days, he is going to implement, it's going to be an economic designation. And it's real simple. If you have the mark of the beast, 666, or whatever the mark may look like, the mark of the beast is going to allow you to engage in commerce, buying and selling, or not. So what it simply is, if you want to make a living, if you want to be involved in buying and selling, you will be required to take the mark of the beast, which shows your allegiance to the man who will be the Antichrist. If you choose not to take the mark of the beast, you will be locked out of any kind of buying and selling. You won't have money. You won't be able to go to the grocery store. You won't be involved in commerce. You'll be behind the scenes bartering for the things that you need to stay alive. But you will also be hunted by the powers of the Antichrist and put to death if they find you. So the mark of the beast is a designation that's going to show who's for the Antichrist and who's against the Antichrist.
So speaking of that, a lot of people think there's a company in Sweden that is implanting chips in people's hands where they're able to buy everything that they need and just by the wave of their hand, or just a lot of people think that's the start, because once that chip gets implanted, these people are voluntarily letting these chips get put in their hands, which to me I find crazy. Like, why would you do that?
That's one of those crazy things in the world. Yeah, whether it's a chip or a tattoo, or, I don't know what the actual method will be, but there will be some kind of identifying mark or tracking device, something that will allow you to participate in the economy. Without that tattoo or chip or whatever it is, without that designation, you basically won't be able to buy and sell anything. That's, the control of the economy and the control of the military is the way that you can have world domination. And there will come a time when, people will be clamoring for somebody to step up and make all this craziness that's happening go away. And there will be a man who will step up and do just that. But it will be very costly.
So listen, I mean, I could talk to you all day. But we're getting ready to jump off here. I want to say thank you for coming on the show. I would love to have you back on again soon, just to keep the conversation going. It's been a great conversation. I really enjoy your message that you're trying to spread. Before we head out, I'd like to leave everybody with what I always do at the end of the show. If you found your purpose, no matter what anybody tells you, live it. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. I appreciate you. Have a good day.